Hi, this is Greg McLaughlin from the Rebel Base Card Podcast, and you are listening to Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?
In 1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All of it.
One of resistance,
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the first order down.
rebellion,
Rebellion is built on hope.
and redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Star Wars Reactions. This is the other co-host who typically doesn't start off the show. This is David Motters. My co-host Aaron Harris is under the weather, so I am going to be leading the way. And I am ready to react, but I will have my wonderful sister in the Force helping me along the way. You've heard this person before. We love her dearly, and we have flown on the Halcyon with her through the galaxy. It is Mary Perdue. Mary, how you doing?
Great, David. I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me on. Sorry to hear about Aaron being under the weather, though.
Me too. And it happens. You know, Aaron is covered for me, whether it's being sick or family stuff and vice versa. But I'm so thankful you're here. Love talking the wars. In fact, just before you got on, Mary, Aaron just briefly set up the recording for us here, and he said, you know, it was about 10 months ago that Mary was on, and we were talking about the Galactic Star Cruiser and the Halcyon, and you've still been very active down there, haven't you?
Yeah, trying to be. There's been a couple of different groups that are trying to keep the Halcyon alive in a way. And so we've been doing some LARPing, some live action role playing on planet at Batuu, which has been a lot of fun. And that same one of those groups has just announced that they're going to be doing a couple of more of those activities later in October. So people who have flown on the Halcyon are all trying to keep the idea alive, keep the feeling alive, share stories, create new stories, plus just being able to go over to Galaxy's Edge and run around and just enjoy the ambiance and being part of Star Wars and running into friends.
Yeah. You know, I've loved your pictures, Mary, of that LARPing and that whole story created, and I just that you guys were participating in, and I love being able to be a part of that, kind of at a distance. I'd love to be there with you more often, but maybe I'll be able to get down there a little bit more. But keep sending those pictures. Keep us up to date on that. I was fortunate enough to be on the Halcyon with you. I loved being on there with you and Chaz and your sister, and it was just a great time. And so we're just so glad to have you back on and talk about this episode of The Bad Batch. So what I was going to do is, I was going to give a quick tale of the tape, and then just start in with initial reactions. I'll let you go first, and I'll jump after you. You're the guest, but this is The Bad Batch Season 3, Episode 12, Juggernaut. It was released on April 10th, 2024. It was directed by Stuart Lee and written by Ezra Nachman. A little brief synopsis would be that the Bad Batch are continuing to try to, bring their forces back together after Pabu was attacked by the CX-2 trooper. Unfortunately, he was able to get a hold of Omega and take her to Tantus, which is where we see this episode start off. And through the process, we see the Bad Batch go to a Imperial prison camp on a planet called Erebus, where they track down a blast from the past, Admiral Rampart. And so he's in slave labor there. And they do acquire him after quite a battle. and end up escaping with the help of Phee and her ship. In the meantime, we see Hemlock interacting again with Omega and explaining to her, and really to us, the audience, a little bit more about the experiments that they're doing and trying to do. And so the episode ends with us perhaps, hopefully, finding a way to Tantus via Rampart, but that was not revealed in this episode, and so we've got a few left to help us to see where it goes. But typically here, Aaron and I jump in or something like that with our initial reactions. Mary, you're the guest. I was going to have you jump in with your initial reactions, and I'll follow you. So, what are your thoughts on this episode?
Okay, well, I think this episode really lays the foundation for the last arc of the Bad Batch. We have 3 more episodes left. There are 15 of them in total. We've known since the beginning. This was number 12. And so I think there was a lot of foundation laying. We were getting some explanation with the M count and how Omega fits into this necromancer project. And I believe it's going to be pretty nonstop from this point on to get to our finale of our Bad Batch series.
Nice. Yeah, I have to admit, I really enjoyed this episode because of the action. I love clone turbo tanks, and I didn't feel like we got enough of them in the Revenge of the Sith. I remember first seeing it in that movie back in 2005, and we see them on Kashyyyk, right, where Yoda is with Chewbacca and so on. But I also love clone turbo tanks. This is just, like I said, I love the episode because of clone turbo tanks. One of the first massive Lego sets I built with my son was the clone turbo tank. In fact, it's kind of in pieces, and it's been a goal of my son and I to get that thing back together. And seeing this episode has definitely motivated me to get back to that thing. I enjoyed all the action on Erebus. I have to admit, and I really am glad, Mary, this is one of the benefits of having guests on and getting your thoughts on this, because it starts to help me kind of balance what I'm going to say now, which is, I have to admit, and you nailed it, Mary, we're right there towards the end. I think I've finally gotten to the point of just get me to a clone trooper versus stormtrooper war on Tantus. I'm ready for it. I'm kind of no more of the, I may have a way to Tantus, followed by, I don't have a way to Tantus, but I know a way or someone to get there. And so I'm really ready for it to go. And I do agree with you, Mary, that it's really amping up. I really do feel like this is the last one before 13, 14, and 15 really just bring this to a close. So yeah, overall enjoyed it, and for those reasons. But I'm ready. I really am ready. I'm typically not. I'm usually pretty patient about it, but I'm amped for these last 3. Let me just jump into some talking points and just kind of get your thoughts, Mary. And again, if there's some points that you want to bring up, I know you have some notes. Please do that as well. One of the things that I wanted to just kind of run by you is, what kind of vibes did you get? Did you get any, like I mentioned to you, Revenge of the Sith? I got some Rogue One vibes, in terms of prison breakouts when they break out Jyn Erso and stuff like that. But did you get any homages or kind of vibes of other Star Wars movies and animated shows from this particular episode of the Bad Batch?
Well, there were a couple of times that Chaz and I both remarked things reminded us of different things, different items, different shows, or different movies. One is always the callback to, like you said, the great ships and like the tanks and everything that we've seen as far as transportation wise, leading back to the Clone Wars show and back to the prequels, especially episode 3, like you said. And then when they were in that tanker it really kind of reminded me of the Mandalorian show when they brought Bill Burr back, and they broke him out of prison to
Mhm.
to do a mission. That gave me a little vibe of that. So I think they're pulling on a lot of different aspects of all of the different stories and sort of pulling them together to show that yes, this is one big galaxy. However, there are lots of similarities. So just like we say, that we have a small world because we have so many similarities all around the world, there are a lot of similarities all around that Star Wars universe. So it seems to be pulling the threads together in some ways.
I love that you brought up Mandalorian because that was another one that I was thinking about when they were, yes, the Bill Burr episode, and Mando actually took his helmet off for the first time, I believe.
Yeah.
In that. Yeah, that was just great stuff. So, um, was you and I were just talking a little bit before we hit record. Um, did you feel like this episode was primarily the main action sequence of breaking out Rampart, being on the clone turbo tank, and then just kind of couched with a little bit more information about Omega and the cloning process that the Emperor is trying to do via Hemlock? Is that kind of the view you had of this, or did you have a couple other different thoughts on it?
No, no, I think that's pretty much it. Especially trying to get us into what does the M count and Omega have to do with one another. But also, one of the notes that I took, watching, especially when they're breaking Rampart out, is how easily the three remaining Batchers work together. It was almost like Crosshair was never gone. They Crosshair mentioned to Wrecker, remember Plan 55 or whatever it was. I didn't write the number down, but and Wrecker takes a second to think about it, and he goes, "Oh yeah, got it, right behind you. Let's go," kind of thing. So I think that was maybe part of it, that they're letting us see that these guys are still a unit. They have come back as a unit. Um, at the beginning, it did not seem like Wrecker and Hunter really was very accusatory against Crosshair when they are talking about what happened with Omega and her turning herself in order to save Pabu. So I think that was a big part of it, that hey, these guys are still a unit. They're back together. They've sort of let bygones be bygones. They have this goal of getting Omega plus getting all those clones out of Mount Tantus. And, they mentioned before Clone Wars in previous shows and movies as plural. We went through one Clone War, so are we going to see another Clone War, like you said, the clones sort of uprising against being basically enslaved by the Empire now?
Well said. And I'm really glad you mentioned the beginning, because I was curious to see after last week's episode how Hunter and Wrecker would do with Crosshair, if they'd be like immediately like, see, we knew we couldn't trust you, etc. But I wonder if when he made that statement that, she saved this island, she saved the town, and they really knew that that was true. But speaking to that, like I said, I absolutely enjoyed this. Like I said, the big, huge the confrontation between two clone turbo tanks and them getting out of there. A big help in that process was Phee Genoa, and we kind of had her come back. Thoughts on her and her role, and did you enjoy seeing her back? I know I haven't talked to you much about her before, even off air, but do you have any thoughts on Phee and her role in this episode?
I like Phee. At the beginning when we were first introduced to her through Sid, you kind of got the feeling that okay, she's going to be a lot like Sid, and which, I don't know about you, but I don't really care for Sid. We all have a history with Sid at this point, and she's still turning on our guys, apparently. But then I think we quickly found out in the second season when Phee was showing them that she is, an acquirer of antiquities, or as finally Omega said in that one episode, a couple episodes back to Crosshair, okay, she's a pirate.
Right.
But she seems to be a lovable pirate, and I think she really cares for the people on Paboo. I think she cares about what she's doing. I mean, basically, she's a Star Wars Indiana Jones. She's going around and finding these items that need to be put in a museum or taken back to wherever they came from originally, and that type of thing. And I think she has been there for our crew. I think there was definitely a connection between her and Tech, and for her to mention Tech as she first met Crosshair, referring to him again as Brown Eyes, and then the statement that she made that to Crosshair, any friend of Brown Eyes is a friend of mine. So I'm pretty confident that Phee is a part of this group, is a vital part of this group, and I think she cares about this group. She cares about Omega. She cares about the people on Paboo, and I don't think she's any great lover of the Empire. I think she is willing to do whatever she needs to do to make things right.
Oh, I completely agree. I love how you describe Phee, and also Sid. I'm in your camp. I'm not a fan of Sid. Oh my gosh, Rhea Perlman did such a great job of making Sid and completely unlikable. Speaking of that, Mary, could Rampart be any more of a jerk, whether he's a vice admiral or in a prison camp? Is this guy?
Yeah, he's a jerk.
This guy, I thought, there's some rehabilitation, Mary, right? He's in prison and he'll kind of change his ways and have a little bit of a different view and realize, wow, this is how it feels to be on the other end of the Empire's boot. But no, he continues to be.
No, and I don't think with him going to prison, I don't think that was their whole the Empire's purpose of putting him in prison. I don't think rehabilitation was anything they cared about.
Right.
And so he's still just as despicable as he was before. So
yeah. The scene where when they hit the big bump and he's immediately grabbing a blaster to try to shoot Crosshair, and Crosshair shoots the gun out. It's just great. So I know kind of where I wanted to get to in terms of talking points, but I wanted to ask you, because we've recorded together before and you always have so many good notes and thoughts on things. I just wanted to see if there's anything else that you're thinking about that we should talk about with this before I kind of get to, and maybe you might mention what I'm thinking about, but any other notes there that you wanted to share regarding this episode?
Well, there was one thing that I did today before we jumped on together. I have already listened to a few podcasts, reviews of the show, and I've heard a couple people question why the title of this one was Juggernaut. And so I thought, I'm going to look up what the definition of Juggernaut is, not just this piece of equipment, and so there were two definitions that I found that I thought, okay, this kind of cements that this show, this particular episode, is a foundation for the rest of the series. Merciless, destructive, unstoppable, huge, powerful, and overwhelming force or institution. And so is the Juggernaut not necessarily thinking about that tank that they were, the turbo tank, or is the Juggernaut actually Hemlock and Project Necromancer and the Empire? And how are we going to stop it? Because at this point, the Empire and this project seems to be, and Hemlock all seem to be unstoppable.
Oh my gosh, so well said. And you got me thinking, Mary, about how long this goes. And Aaron and I have talked about this a bit before on some previous episodes that, Hemlock is running Project Necromancer now. And to piggyback off what you said, this juggernaut that continues into A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and even Return of the Jedi, and even past that, right? We go into the sequel trilogy and we see, Palpatine on a crane, still trying to come back from death, starting with this process here. And I did mention to Aaron on one of our episodes that when we first heard the words Project Necromancer, I'm like, wait a minute, I remember that from season 3 of The Mandalorian and seeing Moff Gideon talking to the Shadow Council, and there you see Brendel Hux, right? He's leading, right, the project at that point. That's Armitage Hux, the character we see in the sequels. That's his dad running Project Necromancer. So, boy, oh boy, does it go. That's a juggernaut of a project, isn't it? That continues all the way to the rise of Skywalker. And so I'm really glad you looked that up. Yeah, I tend to think of Juggernaut as like unstoppable teams, but here it's like kind of an unstoppable empire, and this project that Hemlock is doing, and like I said, goes all the way until the sequel trilogy. So well said, well said. Speaking of that, this is kind of one of the last talking points I wanted to run by you, because I was thinking about this, just like you were thinking about Juggernaut. Here's my question, Mary, and I love asking you this, you as a retired teacher. If we look at these episodes, all 12 now, just not just this one, but do we as viewers, Mary, understand the M count process better after this episode? Do you feel like you do? I'm curious, or like, I don't know, like Chaz, of course, I've been around Chaz. He figures everything out really fast, but talking some of us
Those old ones.
But how do you feel about that? This, and we got more towards the end of this episode with literally Hemlock saying, let me show you what we're doing to Omega. But thoughts on that, Mary?
I think what they're trying to show here is kind of what we saw in Rebels with when Kanan was training Sabine with the Darksaber, and then that follow up to that in Ahsoka, where Huyang and Ahsoka is helping to train Sabine, not with the Darksaber, but just training with her ability to connect to the Force, all the way back to 1977, when Obi-Wan Kenobi said, that he didn't use midichlorian, they didn't use that, but he just said that the Force was in all living things. And then, of course, then in episode 1, we get Qui-Gon checking Anakin's M count and saying, and Obi-Wan saying this is the highest M count they've ever seen, and so that sort of, I guess, George Lucas kind of made the midichlorians a sort of a symbiotic whatever that we all, that everybody in this universe has, that and just different people are able to reach to the Force or to utilize that M count, in different ways. And so I think the way they're looking at it at this point is, how do we use the M count or the midichlorians as a tool, and to get to where we want to be all the way into episode 9 of the movies, and somehow Palpatine returns, kind of a thing. So I guess it is, and even into the Mandalorian, and with what's going on with them getting Grogu and trying to use his blood, which we're sort of assuming that's the same reason that they were wanting to use his blood, is why they're wanting to use Omega's blood. So it's kind of pulling those two stories together, giving a little bit more information and explanation to that. So we've talked about, I know Aaron says constantly, and I agree with him 100%, there are no filler episodes. Even if something doesn't seem like it's important right that moment, 2 years from now, 2 episodes from now, 10 years from now, that might come back in some way. And I think that's what's happening, with this is there is sort of I feel like there is sort of a long-term plan for everything that we're seeing. I think things like the Tales of the Jedi, and now the new one that's coming up, that's going to be sort of the opposite of that. I think they have a lot of this stuff. I feel like they have a lot of these things set up on an Excel worksheet, and they're like, okay, now it's time to do, page number 3 or whatever. But things are connected, and I think they're showing, especially with Hemlock explaining to Omega, what's going on, and that she is a vital, he says, you are a vital part of, I wrote it down somewhere. You are a vital piece to our work here.
Yeah.
There at the very end. So along with the children that are obviously force sensitive. So how are they using her blood and midichlorians in tangent with those younglings who are force sensitive? So it's just like George Lucas says, it all rhymes. We just have to figure out what's rhyming with what at this point.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback off what you said, like thinking about how, the story group or, the writers think about these things. And here we are, at the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace next month in May. And that's, May of 1999 is when we first heard midichlorians. And here we are a quarter of a century later, and the people at Lucasfilm and the writers are still having a ball, having fun, telling stories related to something brought up 25 years ago. So you're right, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20, they can use it. And the Star Wars universe really provides that, allows for that long-term storytelling as well. And so very well said, very well said. What I was going to do is just go into final reactions. I know you just did a great job describing all that and really tying a lot of this stuff together. And so I was just going to jump in real quick and then get your final reactions, Mary, and then we'll have a psychology. We'll also have Star Wars dad joke of the week, to Mary, and then we'll wrap up the show. But just in terms of my final reactions, I was just kind of I just had a lot of fun with this. I have building that. So that reason, I enjoyed that part. I felt like it really is something to get us prepped, like Mary said, for these last 3 episodes. And I think it is, even though we had a big clone turbo tank battle, that it's kind of, I know it's hard to say, but kind of like a lull before the storm. And like I said, I think these last 3 episodes are going to really, really knock it out of the park, especially from, I'm sure Mary's heard this, and we know a certain number of podcast outlets have seen 12, 13, and 14. They have not seen 15, but kind of some of the stuff I'm hearing is nothing, no spoilers, but just some statements that we're really in for a treat. So I'm super excited about that. So overall, really enjoyed it, and I do agree with Mary. There's little stuff being dropped here, particularly about the M count, building that story up. And so overall, really a good time, and I'm ready for the last 3 episodes. How about you, Mary? What are some of your final reactions?
Yeah, I agree. I think these last 3 episodes are gonna be, interesting. I think we're all going to be sitting on the edge of our seats because, honestly, we don't know where any of these characters go from here, because none of the main characters that we see in this show are have ever been seen anywhere else. We don't see them in the future. So, the writers had a wide open field to do whatever they wanted to pretty much, I think, with them. The other part that we really didn't talk about too much was Emery Karr
Mm,
and how I think conflicted we have seen Emery in these last couple of episodes. Um, I mean, even I think what 2 episodes back, it was very evident that we were supposed to be seeing that she is very conflicted about what's going on when she was talking to Nala Se. And her interactions with Omega at the beginning of the episode and then again at the end of the episode. um she, if you watch the captions, they would pull in there that she, sort of has a sigh after certain interactions with, especially with Hemlock. And just the look, the animators giving her the different looks on her face and her facial expressions, and how she sort of side eyes things as they're being said, or as Hemlock comes in and then takes Omega out with them, and that type of thing. I think we're going to see Emery's story unfold with all of this as well. And I think she's going to be an important part of what is going on Mount Tantus here in these next 3 episodes, and maybe what our outcome will be. The other thing that from the very beginning, Brad Rao and Jennifer Corbett and Dee Bradley Baker, Michelle Ang, they've all said, have your Kleenexes ready, have your tissues ready. And I think when people hear that, they think, okay, something's going to be really bad and we're going to be really sad and that type of thing. But there's also happy tears. So my optimistic thought is hopefully these next 3 episodes will have happy tears. I'm sure we're going to have some sad tears too, but I'm hoping that at the end, when we get to that 15th episode and the series finale, that there will be more things to have happy tears over than sad tears.
oh, wow. Well said, Mary. Well said. I'm thankful you brought up Emery Karr. I did have a note on her that I think we're still seeing the progression of her changing over, and I do agree with you that she's going to play a key role here in the next. Well, as this series wraps up, and I am very hopeful that my tears are tears of joy and happiness versus tears of sadness. So,
Yeah, me too.
yeah. Well, at this point, usually Aaron would be saying that we want to hear from you. And, what are your thoughts on this episode? We have several different ways that you can contact us with our socials. Let me run through them, and then we'll get Mary's information where to find her. So for Star Wars Reactions, on Facebook and X, we are at SW Reactions Pod. On Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Tumblr, and Blue Sky, we're at SW Reactions. Email, it is swreactions@gmail.com. And if you want to leave a voicemail, I haven't done that in a while. A lot of times I like to sneak one on there and surprise Aaron, but it's through SpeakPipe, and it's www.speakpipe.com/Star Wars Reactions. For me, if you want to get a hold of me, I always say Twitter X. It's David_Modders, Modders. That's never changed. I am on Instagram. You can just see my name. And where else? I'm on Blue Sky and some of those other places as well. But like Aaron said, if you email the show or contact any of those, he can always pass it on to me as well. Mary, I alluded earlier in the episode that obviously I follow you on Instagram and all the cool stuff you do and all the Disney parks over there in Orlando. So thankful that you're here in Florida with Aaron and myself. And but where can other people see all the cool stuff that you're doing in the Orlando area and the Disney World properties?
Well, the main place to find me is Instagram. My handle on Instagram is Mary N Chaz, so it's MaryNChazz. And then I do flit over to Twitter X from time to time. And on it is just Mary_Perdue, and it's Perdue. I always tell people like the chicken, not the university. So those are the two main places, but mainly on Instagram. So if, somebody wants to send me a message, on Instagram or whatever, that's fine. I'll respond. And over on Twitter X, I look at it maybe 2 or 3 times a week. So if they send me anything over there, it might be a little bit longer for me to respond over from Twitter. So
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, as promised, I do have a psychology factoid. I did psychology corners in the past, but doing factoids for the Bad Batch season 3. So let me do a quick factoid and then get to Aaron's Star Wars Dad Joke of the Week to wrap this up. So I was looking at this earlier today. This is a brand new, fresh off the presses factoid. And this is about sleep, an important behavior for all of us. And it says people who sleep 5 hours or less each night face a 2.5-fold higher chance of developing depression over a 4 to 12-year period. This is compared to people who sleep 5 to 9 hours, right? Also, the researchers found that people who sleep longer than 9 hours, so you can get not enough, you can get too much. People who sleep longer than 9 hours are 1.5 times more likely to develop depressive symptoms. And this is compared to persons who slept an average of 7 hours a night. So you do have to find your sweet spot, but truly, truly, in terms of sleep, we can get too little and we can even get too much. So just want to share that little psychology factoid. And then I get to torture myself and Mary, with Aaron's Star Wars Dad Joke of the Week. And this does come from Kelly Knox's brand new book that just came out this month, chock full of Star Wars jokes. So, Mary, are you ready for the Star Wars Dad Joke of the Week?
David, my brother, yes, I am ready for Aaron's Dad Joke of the Week.
I'm so thankful you're here. All right, here it is. I'm already choking up. All right. Which planet is the scariest in the galaxy?
I don't know, David. Which planet is the scariest in the galaxy?
Naboo.
That's good. Oh, that should be a good one for Halloween.
That's what I was gonna say. It's definitely for October, but when he sent it and I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a groaner, but it's actually pretty good.
It is.
So there you go. There you go. Well, after we do both of those, we typically, Aaron jumps in and I'll do what he usually does. And Mary already models all of this, but, Aaron and I talk to people about, trying to be a bright light, to be a positive person in the universe, in the galaxy. There's a lot of negativity out there. And we just want to encourage you to be, caring, nice, find something good to do, be kind to people. I like the shirts that say "Be kind," or the license plates, on the front there that say "Be kind." And Mary's all of that, and so Mary would definitely encourage that as well. And yeah, Mary, I can't thank you enough for being on, especially with Aaron being under the weather. So thank you, my sister in the Force. Appreciate you so much.
You are so welcome. Thank you for the invitation. And as always, it's wonderful to talk to you guys. And hopefully we'll be able to get on together with Aaron again sometime soon. And then even, do a little meetup around here and see anybody else that lives in the Orlando, Central Florida area may want to get together at some point this summer.
That's right. Oh, it's going to happen. I got it together with Mary and Chaz and Liberty and her mother back in December, and that was wonderful. It was so good to see you and the whole crew. And yes, we're going to definitely get Aaron on, and the three of us will record, and we'll have a lot of fun with it.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So let me just close out by saying this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
If you'd like to share your thoughts, you can email us at show@starwarsreactions.com for our show notes and the latest news from the Star Wars universe. Visit our website at www.starwarsreactions.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at SWReactionsPod or on Facebook at Star Wars Reactions. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on iTunes. This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.